Good morning, everyone. My name is David Cory, and you are joining myself and my colleague, Mr. Kim Cairns from Victoria, BC. I'm here in beautiful Vancouver today, and we're talking about independence. We are with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and we have been offering courses and coaching based on the concept of emotional intelligence for the past 17 years, and we're here to share a little bit about what we've learned with you through a conversation. So, Kim, what comes up for you around the topic of independence?
Well, Dave, I think that the key parts for me are being able to be comfortable with the notion that I have independent thoughts and feelings, no matter what kind of situation that I'm in, and that's actually perfectly human and acceptable. And so I think it's that notion of being self-directed and not being dependent on other people for my emotional feelings about what's going on.
Yes.
And it's so important in a dynamic relationship, no matter whether that's in a professional context or in a personal context, to bring my full self forward and to be comfortable with that from my interior.
Yes. Yeah, and isn't it interesting, Kim, that whenever we hold back, whenever we don't bring our full selves into the relationship, we have lots of ways around that. So for example, a common one is, so where do you want to go for dinner tonight? Oh, I don't care. Wherever you choose is fine with me. Well, we've just given up our independence at that point. And people feel that they're being, and I'm speaking from personal experience now, people feel like they're being flexible and that they're being, easygoing and easy to get along with. But really what I recognize, certainly from my own behavior in those situations, is that I'm actually not bringing my independence into that relationship. So I'm not contributing. I'm not being a mutual part of that relationship. So now, whenever I hear the question, where would you like to go for dinner, I really think about it. And it's like, okay, so yeah, good question. Where do I want to go for dinner? What type of food appeals to me? What kind of experience would I like to have? And I really try to in a sense, and it sounds funny because it seems so trivial, but in a sense, take back my independence.
Mm-hmm.
And because of course it's so critical that we understand our independence in order to bring what we have to the table in any given situation, to the team, to the relationship, and it's so important at work and in our personal lives.
Well, and I think, Dave, what comes to mind when you say that is there's that piece too of recognition and appreciation for other people's independence as well. Yeah. And valuing that input of information, that different perspective that gives pause for thought and the potential to gather more information with regard to whatever decision is being made. So
ironically, sorry to interrupt, Kim. Go ahead.
If we appreciate it that much, then it's a good idea to be that way myself.
Yes. Yes, we do appreciate it. And in fact, not only do we appreciate independence, but dependence is annoying.
Yes. 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 And so I think, I've had a number of conversations lately around the capacity to be able to laugh at our own behaviors and how we operate is so important. And I think this is one of those examples of, here I am, not being independent in my thinking and definitely not articulating that. So in fact, I'm being dependent. Is that really what I want to be in this situation?
Yes.
A big chuckle that, no, that's not the way I want to be. So what's my choice then?
Right.
To be okay with those independent thoughts. And that's the other part for me, is to be in groups of people or even with one other individual and be okay with having different thoughts and feelings than that person's experiencing. And it's not at the cost of not paying attention to what the other person or the other people are feeling. And there's that level of inquiry that comes along with independence. So again, it's about being able to carry both things forward at the same time.
And isn't it ironic that independence does not exist independently? At least not in terms of our model of emotional intelligence. So, really, you've referenced, and we've had this conversation many times about how independence, how our growing independence is not so that we can sit alone in isolation, but our growing independence is all about gathering up what we can bring to the relationship through our emotional self-awareness, through our assertiveness, and really be a contributing member of what ultimately I think is a wonderful concept, and people often ask about this, and that is what we're working towards is interdependence. So independence does not in any way negate interdependence, quite the contrary. In fact, it's necessary before we can be interdependent, as you've implied.
Yes, and I think it is about contributing to and improving the dynamics of that interdependence by being independent. So again, if we can carry both of those thoughts in our head, which we're capable of as humans, it'll stand us in good stead in those situations where we have that tendency to start talking in our own heads about, okay, what are the potential negative outcomes of me having an independent thought or feeling in this situation? And to be able to dispute that internally and say, well, there are going to be consequences no matter what I do. I may as well be presenting my authentic self and what I'm really thinking and feeling in this moment.
Yes. Yeah, and isn't it also interesting, Kim, that people sometimes score low on independence on the EQI, and they like to try to rationalize that as being more collaborative, and they want to see that as a good thing. Well, I would argue that really we'd rather that you bring more of your independence to a collaborative environment, because you have more to offer in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
And people feel like, well, no, I really, I'm a consultant, and I always have a consultative process, and I'm really more interested in what other people think than what I think, and that may be well and good, but as long as you somehow don't limit the process by holding back what you have to offer, what you have to give in that situation.
Yeah, Dave, and I think that, for me, one of the things that comes to mind with not flexing that independence muscle, what can emerge is a certain passive-aggressive approach to life. Because I have an assumption that I have a phone ringing in the background here. And I thought that somebody was going to be actually looking after that, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm gonna have to get that.
Well, no worries, Cam. No worries. So yeah, back to our discussion of independence. The only people for whom dependence is okay are children. And fairly new employees. After that, it's up to us as parents, as leaders, as the people who are accountable and responsible for the performance of those individuals, for us to think of ways of engaging them in tasks and activities, and think of projects that are going to allow them to develop their independence. And we can all think of those times, Kim, when we've had to be independent, and we both have our Europe stories, and I just remember that feeling of standing beside the Autobahn with my thumb out hitchhiking. Being the only person who knew where I was in the world at that time, and I had my Canadian flag draped over my backpack, and I felt so free, and I was nervous, and I had an anxiety about being so alone and being the only one that I could depend on, and yet it was a kind of an exhilarating experience.
Yeah, interesting that both those things are happening at the same time, right? And I think that what I was saying before I got rudely interrupted by my own phone is that notion of not committing to my independent thoughts and feelings and not articulating those in an assertive fashion is real grounds for that passive aggressive quality to come out. Like, why didn't people know? Well, I knew that wouldn't work. I absolutely knew that idea wouldn't work, but not having given voice to it in the place where it really belonged doesn't promote good things. And your reference to the Autobahn is a great one too, because there's that level of optimism there. That exhilaration comes from the optimism, well, some really weird stuff may happen here. Some unpredictable things may happen. And I have the skills and capacity in order to be able to deal with those situations. So that's where we build those blocks of optimism, is by being independent and stumbling around a bit and being okay with that.
Yes, and independence is found, of course, in the expression, the self-expression composite of the model that we use of emotional intelligence. But there's certainly all kinds of connections back to our self-perception. So we do something independently, and it's like, wow, I did that. I was successful, and I made it, and I got through it, and I figured it out, and all those things. And it feels good. It feels great to have accomplished something, to have achieved. And we really want that for our employees. We want that for our colleagues, and we certainly want that for our children, that they grow and become less dependent on us, just as we want our employees to become less dependent on us as leaders. We want them to take initiative and do things on their own and figure it out, and really not be bothering us every 5 minutes.
Indeed. Well, and that's such an important point around the independence and the self-regard. I mean, that taking independent action, being comfortable with feeling like I have an independent thought or feeling, lends itself to a healthier self-regard. There's just definite interaction there. And it counters that little saboteur voice in my head saying, you're going to get into trouble if you're not agreeing with the rest of the people in the room, or whatever that voice is saying that's counteracting me giving voice to what I'm feeling.
Yes. Yeah, and we certainly have learned this in our travels around the world, Kim. The wonderful part of family and the burdensome or the obligatory nature of family, that in some instances it unfortunately limits the independence that people can have. And people talk about how wonderful their families are, and yet on the other hand, how there's a dependence there too. People feel responsible for others within the family, and part of that is wonderful, and yet the other part is not so wonderful, and there's that lack of freedom that comes with that, and it can be unfortunate all at the same time.
Well, and again, the clarity of relationship that comes from me expressing my need for a degree of independence, no matter how tight I am with my family. And the importance of it for me, and how I recognize that it's important for everybody else in that family group to have some independent time, and to be accepting and understanding of that, and that it's okay to give voice to that and still be committed to that family notion.
Yes. So really, in essence, we're talking about, on the one hand, considering our own independence in relationships, in our families, and considering that others have a need for independence as well. And so we may need to respect that in some situations, and we may need to create space for that in others when people are simply trying to increase or improve their independence.
Well, and you make a really good point there, even from a business point of view, Dave, I think, is as leaders, creating more opportunity for people to experience independence that we're working with.
Yes.
We get a lot of concerns being voiced about, well, these people just won't make decisions on their own. And often my response is, well, how many opportunities are you creating for that to happen? What could you be doing differently there? If that's your desired outcome, what actions are you taking to afford those people opportunities to experience independence?
Yes, and I know that in your work with youth, Kim, you always talk about youth being able to make decisions that matter, and it's that part about mattering. It's like, yeah, I mean, yes, you can decide whether you want macaroni or waffles for lunch, but that decision doesn't matter. And so, how do you grow your independence when all you ever get are simple, trivial choices? So what matters are maybe ways that you use your time, or larger, more consequential decisions. Those are the ways that we develop our independence, not trivial choices.
Yes, indeed.
So we have to think of ways of coming up with decisions for employees to make that matter, not the ones that don't matter. Not about planning the staff birthday party, but really, which way do we go with a particular client? How do we solve a particular issue of consequence? Allowing employees to be involved in those decisions that matter are the ones that will help to grow independence.
Well, when we're having that interaction with that employee after a bit of a fail with regard to a certain decision, leading that discussion with, I want you to know I appreciate the fact that you made an independent decision here. Some things went awry. What can we take a look at here to ensure that may not happen in a similar situation again? So again, fostering that learning opportunity for that employee and encouraging that independent thought and action.
Well, you're suggesting, Kim, that that it's okay as a human being to make a mistake. It's a pretty radical suggestion, don't you think?
Well, I think maybe it's even more radical. Encourage people to make mistakes. It's like, it's okay. We discover some of the most fantastic things in life when we've stumbled around and not done very well in a situation. So to be able to look at those and go, yeah, those are actually the great moments in life. And I can remember many experiences of, falling through ice into very cold water and thinking I actually shouldn't have been walking on that stretch. But there's an exhilaration there in that moment of, oh my God, what am I going to do now? How am I going to resolve this? And it's about being okay with having made a mistake and even having others view that mistake, which is where that's where that saboteur voice really comes in. What are they going to be thinking about me? Right. What negative viewpoints are people going to have on me with this really distinctly different viewpoint that I'm offering up? So to be able to quell that chatter, to know that I'm in charge of that chatter actually, is a very important part of independence. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the close relationship with self-regard again is that idea that of being comfortable in one's own skin. That's a part of self-regard and a part of independence, to be comfortable in your own skin and being able to rely on yourself and say, I can do this, I can get through this. And again, we're not suggesting that anyone has to do anything on their own or alone. But as Kim wisely suggested, it's about that independence of thought. And once you're independent in your thinking, then you can reach out, you can be assertive about what it is that you need from others, and in a clear and direct way. So you don't have to get your needs met by being passive aggressive or being sneaky or being calculating or any of these ways, these things that undermine trust in relationships. So yeah, independence is a great thing, and it doesn't mean that you're alone.
No, not at all. No, you're actually a more vital cog in the machinery of whatever situation you're in.
So Kim, what can people do if they want to develop their independence, if they want a greater sense of comfort with themselves and what they bring to the table? What can people do?
Well, I think, we've talked about it already at this point, but I think to reinforce this notion of getting in charge of that self-talk. We all have those voices in our heads. And I think it's so important to come to the place of recognizing that I'm not going to eject those voices from my head necessarily. Those voices are going to continue to chatter away. And the acknowledgement that sometimes they have important information. But at the times that information is not important, to be able to dispute that self-talk and say, well, that's actually not the case. I've been in similar situations. I've made an independent choice, and it's actually worked out quite well. So I'm not going to be in a position of fear-based decision-making, which is what comes to mind for me. When those voices start to overrule me, I'm in a place of fear-based decision-making. And very rarely does that yield good results.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and there are all kinds of great questions you could ask yourself to develop your independence. For example, what would I do? What would I decide in about whatever it is you're deciding about? What would I decide if I did not have to account to a single other soul in the universe for the decision that I make? What would my choice be then? And then, of course, we have significant others, we have families, we have kids, we have people depending on us, and so of course we need to take them into consideration. But what would I decide if I didn't have to be accountable to anyone? And the other suggestion that I like, and that I in fact have used myself to help me in my independence again was to do something like go to Europe with a backpack and nothing else, and of course you don't have to do anything as radical as that, but look for those ways where you can be alone, where you can just be alone with your thoughts and see, get to know this person that is inside your skin. Who is that person? What are they like? What are they not like? And just spend time alone. Take yourself to a movie. So take yourself out for a night on the town alone. If that's a scary thought or a weird thought for you, all the better. That's all the more reason why maybe you need to do that, and just spend some time alone. What do you like to do alone, Kim?
Well, I really like both of those suggestions a lot. That taking myself out to a movie or taking myself out to lunch or to dinner is. To me, that's a joyful experience because it's a time to just be with myself. So I think it is about exercising that choice to spend time alone with thoughts or actions or activities is so valuable in terms of what we can learn about ourselves in those circumstances. To be in a strange place and not have your GPS device with you and figure out how to get someplace else that you need to be. That requires independent action, inquiring with others about getting some directions. But again, what the key point that you made was taking advantage of those opportunities that present themselves in our lives every day.
Yes, and I know you like to get out on your bike, Kim, and go for a ride, and I like to do the same. And I like to take the dog for a long walk. I mean, the dog's not gonna talk to me, so I kind of have to talk to myself, and so that's alone time for me. And I like to get out on my motorcycle occasionally, and just go. It's kind of a contained environment, and I'm kind of shut off from the rest of the world, and it's kind of nice to just experience that, being alone with my thoughts and my feelings, and just really getting in touch with those and being okay with those, whatever they happen to be.
Yeah.
So people see independence as maybe not a good thing, and we really just want to argue the contrary, that that it's a really great thing, that we need to develop our independence before we can again be interdependent, and to be a good friend, a good partner, a good son or daughter, in our relationships, is to really know what it is that we want and how we feel, and then be able to share that with others, to be a mutual part of the relationship, to say where we want to go for dinner, for example, and contribute that thought, so that negotiation and compromise can come about, and you can have a better relationship than if one person is making all the decisions all the time. So what final thoughts would you like to add, Kim, as we come close to the end of our time?
Well, again, I think for me, it's about operating in congruence with my values. So it's about identifying what my values are, and am I operating in congruence with that? The same with independence, being able to identify what's important for me about independence. What are the important facets of that for me? And then am I operating in conjunction with that in most situations? And the more often that will happen, the better results will be yielded, definitely.
Right. And we didn't talk about this, Kim, but we didn't talk about the idea that one can be too independent. And if you can get a high score on the EQI in independence and it not necessarily be a good thing. You could possibly just prefer to not interact with others, to not be in relationship, and that's not a good thing. Best is to have a healthy level of independence where you know what you bring to relationships, you know what you contribute, and what you can give. So that's what we grab.
Yeah, and again, Dave, I think that's an important point, and it's that whole notion of with the EQI, it is about balance and flow and recognizing all the aspects of our emotional operating system. And of course it's organic, it's flowing all the time. So it's that capacity to be aware of, okay, what's going awry here? Oh, I actually have been spending way too much time on my own. I don't have enough I don't have enough interaction with other people. I'm just articulating these thoughts to myself, and that's about it. So, recognizing where things are not flowing the way you would like them to, and being able to address it. So again, the bonus of this model is just that opportunity to increase my self-awareness about how I'm operating and the different facets of that operational system.
Right. And if you're watching this and you've not taken the EQI, you don't know what your independence score is, you feel free to contact us regarding that. You can reach myself or Kim at our first names, David or Kim, at eitrainingcompany.com, and that's eitrainingcompany, all spelled out, one word, .com. And feel free to visit our website for more information about emotional intelligence programming that we both design and deliver, and ask us any questions that you might have at any point. Our next program is going to be on interpersonal relationships, so it will be about connection, and it'll be about bringing our independence into the connections and relationships that we have, both personal and professional. That's what makes life so rich and worth living, is our relationships with others. And so we'll talk about that next time, and we hope you join us. And feel free to tell us anything that you'd like to tell us, both feedback about the program, questions, stories about independence or interpersonal relationship. And if you send us a story about interpersonal relationship, we'll try to share that on the air during our regular broadcast. So from myself, David Cory at the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to turn it over to my good colleague and friend, Kim Cairns, to say goodbye from his end. So thanks for joining us. Over to you, Kim.
Thanks for joining us again today, folks, and goodbye from the very left coast of the country. And I just want to reiterate that it's really wonderful to hear stories about how emotional intelligence is unfolding in your lives. The stories, the narrative of what's happening are always wonderful to hear. So by all means, sit down, take 5 or 10 minutes, and tell us a story about how some aspect of EI has unfolded in your life recently.
Thanks, Kim. Bye for now.